Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. On the issue of magic or sihr. Now, there are some people who don't believe that this happened. Even in Islam, you know, the Mu'tazilite was certain rationalist school of thought in Islam. They don't believe anything about jinn possession or the effects of sihr, what we call magic. Be that as it may, there's enough evidence, these evidence are not theories. They are actual things that you can go and see. You can see people who are possessed. You can see how they act. You can see what the behavior is. So magic is something that is part of understanding Islam, because our Prophet ﷺ was affected by magic, and Allah sent down the last two surahs of the Quran, Surah Falaq and Surah Nas, as a protection against magic. Now, we live in a time where a lot of communities, especially older Islamic communities, they have a tendency to attribute everything to magic. You know, if they have a pain in their neck is magic, if they have a pain in their feet is magic, if something happens, everything is magic. Okay? And they spend a lot of money on charlatans, people who, you know, as Dan Drummond said, they're selling snake oil, you know, Professor Buba, and this one, and he can fix love and, you know, make potions and all these things. Okay, so they are duped, and they spend a lot of money trying to fix things that really, it comes out of their superstition. There is a reality of magic, but it is overemphasized. In Islam, the cure is called ruqya. And it is something valid that is done, but there are different types of ruqya. There are people who use jinns to fight jinns, and there are people who use the verses of the Quran and the du'as of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to fight these jinns. The best method is to use the book of Allah and the statements of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, the first thing that you do is that you have to test the person, okay? And we do that by using Surah Safat. Surah Safat is the surah that you use to diagnose whether this person is mad or has a mental issue or psychological issue, or if this person is possessed. Why? Because the word for madness in Islam is majnun, and the word for jinn possession is majnun. Why? Because they exhibit the same behavior. And majnun means really to cloud the senses. So the jinn can cloud your senses, and psychological issues can also cloud your senses. So it is really difficult to sometimes to be sure which one is which. So we use Surah Safat. Normally people react when you use Surah Safat by a sensation either in their limbs or in their stomach, burning sensation, or in their head. Okay? Now when you do this and there is no response, then you send that person to the nearest psychiatrist. Right? Because sometimes their problem is really outside the realm of jinns. Okay? Now, one of the things about ruqya or spiritual healing is that the Prophet ﷺ said that the majority of his ummah will die from evil eye. The majority of Muslims will die from evil eye, because evil eyes could give you symptoms that like cancer or stroke, or it can give you medical issues. That's another thing about jinns. They can give you medical issues. Okay? And sometimes when the doctor check and say, I don't see anything wrong with you, but I don't understand why you have this issue. You have an issue that looks medical, but sometimes when they check, there's no evidence, and sometimes there is evidence. So it's something that is very technical, and it can lead to a lot of superstition. To me, the majority of people I've come across, they need a psychiatrist. And what has happened in Islam is that we have not developed a proper approach to psychology. Okay, we have the people who do tasawwuf, and they claim to understand the soul and the self, but they have not formulated a methodology of really dealing with the psychological illnesses that we find in our time. And that is a necessary science that we need, because what we have today is influenced by Western scholarship, Jewish scholarship, because I'm not faulting any of these people. They have applied their sciences to try to solve the problem. We Muslims, we have been backward historically in dealing with that particular aspect, of Islam. So we need to develop an Islamic psychological approach and treatment, because what has happened is that we have a lot of people with issues entering into Islam. There's no doubt. There are a lot of people with issues, psychological issues, entering into this deen. And whereas the Shahada will guarantee your paradise, but you could be mad as a nutter, in your everyday life. In your everyday life, you could be crazy, but you'll go to Jannah because of your declaration of faith. And we tend to think that the Shahada cures everything. No. Okay, there are social problems, there are psychological problems. And one of the advice I tell people with psychological problems is that Uthman Danfodio, Sheikh Uthman Danfodio, he said that the cure in everything is in opposite. The cure is in the opposite. And that which means that part of treating psychological issues, you have to be involved. But what has happened in our time, they feed us tablets. And this causes a lot of neurosis and change in character. So we have to really discover a new holistic way of dealing with problem. It's not a shame. It's not to be ashamed about, because sometimes we have chemical imbalance. We have a lot of kids who were born from mothers who were part of the crack cocaine period, and they have children now who they have problems, emotional problems, psychological problems, because of what the mother did, the lifestyle the mother had before. And this person come into Islam and have a kid, and there's no control. You can't understand this child at all, and these children get old and enter into youth, as young men and women, and they exhibit wanton violence. We have all these issues to deal with. So Ruqya is a science, and we need to update it for our modern times, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Alaikum.